So the closure of the eShop is upon us. I know that I keep talking about this, I brought it up in quite a few videos, but it just keeps getting closer and closer. And in fact, by the time you're watching this, the eShop for the 3DS and the Wii U may even have shut down, which is very sad news. So because of this, there are a lot of games these days that you can't buy anymore digitally on the 3DS eShop. You can only sort of hunt for these cartridges, and they're going to get rarer and rarer, and probably, if we're honest, they're going to become more expensive. And that got me thinking about games on the 3DS that really I'd like to have ported forward onto future systems. The Switch is what I'm thinking of at the moment, but this could be a Switch 2 or whatever comes next. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Hello and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having a good day. So the very first game that we're going to talk about is Ever Oasis. Now, Ever Oasis was made by Grezzo, who normally handle ports for Nintendo. They ported Miitopia onto the Switch, and they also ported the recent Zelda Link's Awakening. It's very rare that they do their own game. However, with Ever Oasis, that's exactly what they did. They were allowed to make their own game, and by all accounts, it's supposed to be a pretty good little game, made with a lot of love. It's sort of a mix of an RPG and a town builder aspect all rolled into one. You go out, you fight monsters, you bring back loot, that lets you upgrade your town, which lets you get stronger, and then you go and fight bigger and badder monsters. Like I said, it was pretty well received, especially by people who like RPGs. I haven't had a chance to play it myself, but it's definitely on my list to get to. However, I think that really it was hampered by the fact that it came out as the Switch was already out. You know, it was one of those games later in the 3DS years when the Switch had already come out, and so not as many people were interested in what was coming out on the 3DS. They were focused on the shiny new Switch instead. And really, I believe that if this game was given another chance on the Switch with that massive Switch install base, I think it would do pretty well. I think a lot of people like RPGs on the Switch, and I think more people would pick it up than did on the 3DS. And I think really that could only be a good thing, because if it does do well and, you know, Nintendo notices, then maybe Grezzo gets to make another original game, and we can see what they would want to do with something original on the Switch with more power. And I would be really excited to see what that was. So there you go, that's the first one, Ever Oasis. I would love a port onto the Switch. The second game is possibly an obvious one, but it's Samus Returns. Now, this is a remake of Metroid 2 Return of Samus, and we do already have Metroid 2 on the Switch. You can play it through the Nintendo Switch Online backwards catalog, but we don't have this remake. And really, with Nintendo bringing more and more Metroid games onto the Switch, you know, we've had Dread, we've just got Prime, Fusion has just come out as well at the time that I'm recording this. So we've basically got almost all of the Metroid games on the Switch. I'm really hopeful we're going to get Prime 2 and 3 at some point. I'd really like them to include Zero Mission as well in the GBA section of Nintendo Switch Online. And basically at that point we've got almost all of them, so why not include Samus Returns as well? It reviewed pretty well, but again, it came out in that time period when the Switch was out and people were interested in the Switch, and not as many people were interested in the 3DS. I think more people were interested in Samus Returns than they were in Ever Oasis. I think it's that same kind of deal where if you bring it over to the Switch with a higher player base, I think it will get a lot of love. And I think bringing it over will be amazing. Just complete that Metroid collection. So for the next one, we're going for something a little bit different, sort of a small puzzle game, and that is Pullblox or Pushmo, depending on where you're from. It has different names in different regions. This really is just a cute little puzzle game. It's got some really good puzzle mechanics. It's really fun. I have been playing it on the 3DS, and they made it quite a few of them on the 3DS, and really it's such a weird decision that not even one of them has come across onto the Switch. It's not really the kind of thing that you require two screens. I think it would play perfectly well on one screen, and it would just be lovely to have another small puzzle platformer type game on the Switch. I think these days Nintendo doesn't make enough of these sort of cutesy, charming games that, you know, you don't have to spend £40-60 on. You know, you just spend a little bit of money, you get something that you can sink a few hours in, just whenever you want, pick it up here and there. There's not enough of those on the Switch, and I think this would be a perfect addition to the Switch lineup. And if they didn't want to port an old game, then I would be just as happy with them making a new one to bring on. I just really think that they should bring a game from this series onto the Switch. So the next series that I want to talk about is Yokai Watch. And if you don't know about it, Yokai Watch is sort of a similar idea to Pokemon. It is different in its own ways, but it's sort of a similar idea to Pokemon, collecting monsters and using them to battle. Now, Yokai Watch did do pretty well originally over in Japan. It didn't do so well over here. We got 3 games in the series over here, and then there was a couple of spin-offs, but overall it didn't do too well over in the West. And really over here in the West, you know, in Europe and America, the series didn't get a chance at all on the Switch, which I think is a shame. The way the Yokai Watch games seem to be going, they seem to be improving each time, and 3, as far as I understand, was sort of the best received one of these mainline games that came out over here in the West. So it kind of feels like they could maybe take everything that they've learned when they made 3 and bring it over and give it a chance on the Switch in the West. You know, the Switch has such a big player base. Again, I know I keep saying that, but it's true. I feel like they should give it one more chance over here in the West on the Switch. I understand there was Yokai Watch 4 in Japan, and that didn't sell very well even in Japan, so this one might not really be very realistic, but you know, it's my wish list, and I would quite like to see what happens with a Yokai Watch game on the Switch over here, and just see what the reaction is to it really, because it's always a shame when a franchise sort of comes to its end and dies due to lack of sales. So yeah, give it another shot worldwide on the Switch and see what happens. Maybe it'll take off again. Okay, so my next game on this list is actually one that a lot of people say is probably one of the best games on the 3DS already. You know, it's already received a lot of love. That is Kid Icarus Uprising. As I say, people seem to love it. It seems to have had so much love poured into the game. It's almost like it was too big for the 3DS. It's got amazing graphics for the device, it's got great dialogue, just sort of seems to have been created really, really well. However, a lot of people, and I will say I'm included in this, don't really like the control scheme. You know, using the stylus to direct and then using the other hand, you get hand cramps. Also, I'm left-handed, so that feels even more awkward. I think a remaster of this game on the Switch would do really well. You know, make those graphics that were already good on 3DS even better. Change the control scheme a bit. I think maybe they might have to change the game a little bit to accommodate for a different control scheme, but if they can make it work, then this would be an incredible game to have on the Switch or the Switch 2, whichever. And to be honest, I think maybe it could even kick off the Kid Icarus IP again. It could take the series in a whole new direction, refresh it, and sequels or other games could come from there. Another puzzle series now, and it's Professor Layton. And the reason I say this is because we've just had a few weeks ago a Nintendo Direct where they announced a new Professor Layton game. And there already is quite a lot of excitement for a new Professor Layton game. However, at the same time, there's probably a lot of people that don't know much about Professor Layton, don't really understand what all the fuss is about, and they now don't really have a way to get into older ones because the 3DS eShop is closing and, you know, the cartridges will be expensive. I know that we did get one Layton game on the Switch, but, you know, it was the one that was least favorably reviewed. So I think if they can remaster or port some of these classic Professor Layton games onto the Switch, do a couple, one after the other, sort of like how they're doing with Metroid Prime, then I think it will build some excitement for this series. And it will also be really good to have these games on the Switch. If they can sort of make the dual screen system work quite nicely, then I think these are really great. I think it would be lovely to play these puzzle games handheld, or, you know, if they do remaster them, then they would look good blown up on the TV as well. Personally, I would really like a full remaster of the very original game, you know, Professor Layton and the Curious Village. I think that would be incredible. I would definitely buy that. And I think a lot of people would too. And then especially if they kept going and they brought out a few more, I think it would drive up interest and put the new game in a really great place to get lots of sales when it comes out. Okay, going on to an RPG now, and this is Shin Megami Tensei 4. There's a very specific reason that I have included Shin Megami Tensei 4 on this list and not the other ones. So you could include the other ones because the cartridges are really expensive, but Shin Megami Tensei 4 in particular, they didn't make a cartridge over here in the West. So once the eShop is closed, which it might have done by the time you're watching this, you can't go and hunt down a cartridge and you can't download it from the eShop. There is no way to get that game. And really, with a beloved series like this, I think that's a real shame. I always think it's bad when a game is just lost forever and there's no way to play it at all. It's happening more and more with older games, but this isn't an old game. This is a 3DS game. It shouldn't be happening. It's kind of true of the other games as well, in the sense that they didn't seem to make very many cartridges, and so physical copies of the other games, Apocalypse especially, are very expensive. And so I'm kind of including them as an all-encompassing Shin Megami Tensei for the 3DS. I think it would be good to bring it over. But if they're only going to pick one, I think they have to pick Shin Megami Tensei 4, because otherwise, especially here in Europe, there's just no other way to buy it. So bring it over. They can make it look pretty if they want, you know, do a remaster, but to us, even if all they do is port it over, that would be great. There just needs to be a way to play this game legitimately on a system. That's all I'm asking. Okay, final one now, and I'm not sure how viable this is really, but I'm going to include it anyway as the last one because I would absolutely love for it to happen. And that is the Dragon Quest games on the 3DS, and you could kind of include the DS ones on this as well. So we're getting more and more Dragon Quest games on the Switch, and that's great. We've had 11, and they've done the original trilogy of those as well, but there's a big gap in the middle of games that we don't have. And Dragon Quest games tend to go up quite a lot in price, the physical cartridge. I think it's Dragon Quest V now that's really expensive at the moment. So I would like to have those old DS games over onto the Switch. However, if I specifically talk about the 3DS games 7 and 8, well, one of the big complaints about 8 was that it was ported over from the PlayStation 2 and it went onto the 3DS, and that was great. They added new features and they added new characters, and that was amazing. However, one of the biggest complaints about that version was that the visuals were not as good as the PlayStation 2. And so if you could step that up onto the Switch, which has more power than the 3DS, I think that would be a good way to give players another way to play it, but, you know, with those graphics that they wanted all along. With Dragon Quest VII, I didn't really hear that complaint. However, you know, Dragon Quest VII had things chopped and changed. Adjustments were made that weren't always favorably received. With 7 and 8, if they can sort of bring versions over onto the Switch, which are the best of both worlds, they bring over everything that everybody wanted and make them look graphically better, then I think that would be amazing. I think they would sell well. There always seems to be a want for Dragon Quest games, so I can't see them not selling well. And then it would be great to have them on the Switch, which, you know, everybody's hoping will be Nintendo's long-running system where even if you get a Switch 2, you can still play Switch games. It'll just enable us to play these games for a very long time. And while it's a big ask, hopefully as time goes on, you would then eventually get all of the Dragon Quest games on the Switch. And how amazing would that be to have all of the games on the Switch where you can play them all in one place? Sort of like what I'm hoping happens with Metroid, just having everything together in one place would be incredible. Well, there we are. Those are the games that I would like to be ported over from the 3DS to the Switch. I know it's unlikely to get all of them, or maybe even any of them, given that a lot of people think the Switch is coming to the end of its life, but these are what I would really like to have move over. What about you? Are there any that I've missed that you would like to be ported over as well? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.